A pleasant day to all of you, especially to our professor. Group 1 is assigned to report an ancient philosophy, triumvirate, and on medieval philosophy. Triumvirate philosophers, the trio of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. The medieval philosophers, Saint Augustine and Anthony de Melo. Is Ronald A. Bisayo II. Reporter being tasked to share with you the first of the three great philosophers, Socrates. But before I proceed to the main topic, let us take note of our learning objectives. The first is describe the Socratic teaching method. The second, tell the philosophy's primary concern on ethics and education. The last, explain the main teachings of Socrates. Socrates, as the father of Western philosophy, was also known as virtuous man. Why virtuous man? What is virtue? Virtue is defined as habit or quality that allows individuals to succeed at their purpose. Socrates has believed that one has to conform to a standard of right or known as morality. The Socratic method, also known as dialectic method, the teacher will pose thought-provoking questions giving way to develop their critical thinking. Series of questions would be asked in which could lead or gradually distill the answer a person would seek. This teaching method is currently employed by teachers in our schools, in which the students could ask questions of their own until they will arrive for the answer of their question. Socrates also believed that the primary concern in philosophy was how should we live, guided by questions: what is good, good versus evil, what is right, right versus wrong, what is just, just and being fair with others. He also assumes that education is the key to living an ethical life. When can we say an ethical life? No one desires evil, meaning we refrain from doing bad. No one errs or does wrong willingly or knowingly, meaning mistake was done unintentionally. Virtue, all virtue in knowledge. This means that if one possesses all the good virtues in life, he has acquired all the knowledge. Virtue, all means positive moral behavior. Socrates strongly believed that the cultivation of virtue is the most important pursuit in life. He believed that virtue leads to a good and fulfilling life. The virtuous person is one who does well for society and is in control of themselves and their desires. The main teaching of Socrates, know thyself, meaning discover your own self, know your strengths and weaknesses, pursue your life's purpose, care for your soul, do good things while still alive here on earth, be a good person and you will not be harmed by outside forces. Strive to be a good person at all times and be the best version of yourself every day. And there are the some of Socrates' famous quotes. Socrates said, let him that would move the world first move himself. Sometimes you put walls up not to keep people out, but to see hawkers and not to break them down. Strong minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, weak minds discuss people. Education is not the filling of a vessel, but the lightning of a plane. I hope you learned something on my topic, and that's would be all. Thank you.
Good day. I'm Stanley Marie J. Sarausa, and I'm here to present to you the ideas and contributions of Plato in understanding the self. So here's our objectives. First is to know the perspective of Plato in self. Second is on how he describes the real world. And lastly, what are the three components of the soul? So let's start. Plato. Plato is a student of Socrates, and in his theory, he believes that there is dichotomy between the world of forms and the world of materials. So what does it mean? It means that man is consist of two parts, the body and the soul. So the body is the material and the destructible part of a human person, while the soul is the immaterial one and the indestructible part of a human person. And indeed, for Plato, the soul serves as the self. Okay? His philosophy asserts that there are two realms, which is the physical realm and the spiritual realm. As we can see, that the body and the soul can be separated. In fact, Plato believes that the soul is just residing in our body temporarily. So, in Plato's concept, we had an idea that when a person dies, the soul will depart from the body. And because the soul is indestructible, or the immaterial, as I said earlier, the soul cannot die and it will be eternal. Plato also believes that the world where we exist right now is not the real world, but rather this is just a mirror or a replica of the true reality. So what do you think is the real world for Plato? Okay? The real world for Plato is the world of forms, and it only exists in the realm of ideas. Well, it's not something that we can feel or see because it is beyond our consciousness. Okay? We don't know how it feels in the realm of ideas. Okay? So, according to Plato, the soul is the most divine aspect of the human being. When he says that the soul is the most divine part of a human being, it doesn't mean that it is in a religious or spiritual way, but rather he is saying that because he believes that the soul is the most intellectual part of a human being. So here's why Plato said that the soul is the most intellectual part of a human being. Okay? Plato believes that there are three parts of a soul. Okay? So Plato splits the soul into three. So what are these parts? Okay? First is the rational soul, second is the spirited soul, and third is the appetitive soul. For Plato, the rational soul is being located in the head. Okay? So as you can see in the diagram, from the word itself, rational, it uses reason or human reason. Okay? The rational soul enables the human person to think, reflect, analyze, and do other cognitive functions. Okay? So here's an example. When you are analyzing a math problem, science, physics, or anything that uses your mind, okay, to think and analyze. Okay, that's basically it. And here's another example. When you are answering your exams, you're thinking, solving anything, okay, so it uses also all of your cognitive functions, and well, it is under the rational soul. Next is the spirited soul, and the spirited soul is located in the chest. It enables the person to experience joy, sadness, anger, and other emotion or feelings. Everything that involves in your emotional aspect and feelings is basically a part of our spirited soul. So here's an example. When you see your crush every day, or when you are with her, or when you see that she is achieving something in her life, you feel happy. You felt the joy in yourself, okay? So here's another example. When you play online games or PC games, mobile games, especially ML, okay? The best example. So you get angry at your teammates, you blame on your teammates, your internet connection, your mobile phone, everything. You get angry at everyone. So that's the time also that our spirited soul is working. And lastly, the appetitive soul. So appetitive soul is located in the abdomen. This is the part of the soul that drives the human person to experience physical pain, hunger, thirst, or even sex, because it is the one who pursues desire. It will just come up involuntarily, like you want to eat or sleep, or even the urge to have sex or have a sexual desire. Okay, so here's an example. As you can see, if the man is thirsty, well, he will drink, or if the man is hungry, then you will eat. Okay, so you cannot force yourself or demand yourself that, oh, I will be hungry at exactly 3 p.m. in the afternoon. No, it's not like that, because as I said, it will just come up involuntarily. Okay, so somehow a healthy person balances the demands of the rational and appetitive soul, because everything that is too much is bad for us. So let's have some recap. So first, Plato believes in dichotomy between the world of forms and the world of materials. Second is Plato believes that the only real world is existing on the world of forms. Third is the soul serves as the self. Fourth is the soul is the most divine part of a human being, or the most intellectual part of a human being. And lastly, the three components of the soul: the rational soul, which uses human reason; the spirited soul, which works on your emotions and feelings; and lastly, your appetitive soul, which pursues human desire. And I hope you learned something from me, and thank you for listening.
I am Michael Cedric Samson from the SMT 114. My topic is all about Aristotle's concept of the self. Objectives: to know what Aristotle's concept of the life is, to understand the concept of the life, to distinguish what is Aristotle's concept of the self. Aristotle was undoubtedly the most brilliant student of Plato. Yet, Aristotle diverged from most Plato's fundamental philosophies, especially on the concept of the self. As we may already know, Plato is sure that the true self is the soul, not the body. And to be specific, the true self of Plato is the rational soul, which is separable from the body. Aristotle's concept of the self is quite opposite. Aristotle's concept of the self is more complicated, as he talked about so many things in this topic. However, there is one main theme in Aristotle's narrative of the soul that guides us in understanding his concept of the self. That is, the human person is an irrational animal. In other words, for Aristotle, the human person is simply an animal that thinks. How did Aristotle come up with an idea that the human person is just an animal that thinks? Well, his idea of the soul provides the key. Why, for Aristotle, all living beings have souls. Because for Aristotle, all living beings have souls, then it follows the plant, animals, in addition to the humans, have souls. Thus, Aristotle distinguished the three levels of souls, namely vegetative soul, sensitive soul, and rational soul. According to Aristotle, the vegetative soul is found in the plant, while the sensitive and rational soul are found in animals and humans, respectively. According to Aristotle, plants have souls because they possess the three basic requirements for something to called a living being. That is the capacity to grow, reproduce, and feed themselves. Sensitive souls also grow, reproduce, and feed themselves, but unlike the vegetative soul and sensitive soul, are capable of sensation. Finally, rational souls grow, reproduce, feed themselves, and feel. But unlike the sensitive soul, rational souls are capable of thinking. According to Aristotle, this is the highest level of soul, is presenting only in humans. Since humans possess all the characteristics of animals, that is the capacity to grow, reproduce, feed themselves, and feel, in addition to being rational. Aristotle concludes that the human person is just an animal that thinks. As Aristotle's famous dictum of the person, man is an irrational animal. Again, this explains why, for Aristotle, the human person is just an animal that thinks. Now, for Aristotle, human person is not a soul distinct from the body, as Plato would have us believe. Aristotle argues that the self for the human person is a composite of body and soul, and the two are inseparable. Aristotle's concept of the self, therefore, was constructed in terms of hylomorphism. Aristotle viewed the soul as the form of human body, and as a form of the body, the soul is the very structure of the human body, which is allows human to perform activities of life such as thinking, willing, imagining, desiring, and perceiving, while Aristotle believed that the human person is essentially body and soul. He was led to interpret the true self of humans as the soul that animates the body. However, Aristotle believed that the body is as important as the soul, as it serves as matter to the soul. Although Aristotle contends that the soul is the form of the body, he didn't not argue for the primacy of the former over the latter. Again, Aristotle's concept of the self is hylomorphic. That is, that self or the human person is composed of body and soul. The two are inseparable. Thus, we cannot talk about the self with a soul only or self with a body only. For Aristotle, the self is initially body and soul. Indeed, for Aristotle, the self is a undefined creature.
So, good afternoon everyone. I'm Melvin Cesarena with the same topic of Aristotle's concept of the self, BSMT section 1 and 4. So, let's go. First is the objectives. Explains Aristotle's concept of the self. And Aristotle was undoubtedly the most brilliant student of the two, yet Aristotle diverged from the most fundamental philosophies, especially on the concept of the self. As we may already know, Plato showed that the true self is a soul, not the body. And to be specific, the true self of Plato is the rational soul, which is separable from the body. Aristotle's concept of the self is quite the opposite. Aristotle's concept of the self is more complicated, as he talks about so many things in this topic. However, there is one main theme in Aristotle's narrative of the soul that guides us understanding his concept of the self, that is, the human person is a rational animal. In other words, for Aristotle, the human person is simply an animal that thinks. So, how did Aristotle came up with the idea that the human person is just like an animal? Is just an animal that thinks? Well, his idea of the soul provides the key. Aristotle defines the soul as the principle of life, and as the principle of life, it causes the body to live. This explains why, for Aristotle, all living beings have souls, because for Aristotle, all living beings have souls, then it follows that plants and animals, in addition to humans, have souls. Thus, Aristotle distinguishes three levels of soul, namely vegetative soul, sensitive soul, and rational soul. According to Aristotle, the vegetative soul is found in plants, while the sensitive and rational souls are found in animals and humans. Respectively, according to Aristotle, plants have souls because they possess the three basic requirements for something to be called a living being, that is, the capacity to grow, reproduce, and feed themselves. Sensitive souls also grow, reproduce, and feed themselves. But unlike vegetative souls, sensitive souls are capable of sensation. Finally, souls grow, reproduce, feed themselves, and feel. But unlike the sensitive souls, rational souls are capable of thinking. According to Aristotle, the highest level of soul is present only in humans, since humans possesses all the characteristics of animals, that is the capacity to grow, reproduce, feed itself, and feel. In addition to being rational, Aristotle concludes that the human person is just an animal that thinks. As Aaron's famous dictum of the human person goes, the man is a rational animal. Again, this explains why for Aristotle the human person is just an animal that thinks. Now, for Aristotle, the human person is not a soul distinct from the body. As Plato would have us believe, Aristotle argues that the self of the human person is a composite of the body and soul, and that the two are inseparable. Aristotle's concept of self therefore was constructed in terms of hylomorphism. So hylomorphism, Aristotle views the soul as a form of the human body, and as a form of the human body, the soul is the very structure of the human body, which allows humans to perform activities of life, such as thinking, willing, imagining, desiring, and perceiving. While Aristotle believed that the human person is essentially body and soul, he was led to interpret the true self of humans as a soul that imitates the body. However, Aristotle believes that the body is important as the soul as it serves as matter of the soul. Although Aristotle contends that the soul is the form of the body, he did not argue from the primacy of the former over the latter. Again, Aristotle's concept of the self is hylomorphic, that is, the self or the human person is composed of body and soul. The two are inseparable. Thus we cannot talk about the self with the soul only, or a self with a body only. For Aristotle, self is essentially body and soul. Indeed, for Aristotle, the self is unified creature.
Hello everyone, so I'm here to present to you my presentation about Saint Augustine medieval philosophy. So before I proceed, uh, I, I would like to introduce myself first. I am Arpo Iribicontelia, and in this discussion, we're gonna find out first who is Saint Augustine, second, what is his perspective in self, third, how he described the self, and fourth, how can I relate in his belief. So let's first, who is Saint Augustine? Saint Augustine was born in 354 AD in Tagiz, Numidia, modern day Aras, Algeria, into an upper class family. The name Augustine is a form of the title Augustus, which was given to Roman emperors to indicate their greatness and venerableness. What is his perspective in self? So, as we can see, Augustine's sense of self is his relationship to God, both in his recognition of God's love and his response to it. He achieved it through self-presentation, then self-realization. Augustine also believed one could not achieve inner peace without finding God's love. Now, how he described the self. Uh, for Augustine, the self only has a meaning in relationship to God. Individuals can forge an identity of sort apart from God, as Augustine himself did in his younger days. But it is not a self in the true sense of the word, based on Augustine. Um, why did Saint Augustine says that one could not achieve inner peace without finding God's love and confession? How we say that? As Saint Augustine believed that human beings cannot find inner peace apart from God's, because of his belief that God created human nature. In his account, human beings were made to seek God in his find peace in God. Thus, the search of God is not foreign to us, but rather built. That is according to him. For me, I also believe that the human are created, as Augustine believed, because we are created in his own image. We can read that in scriptures in Genesis 1. Um, how can I relate in his belief? How can I relate? Augustine's life is from sinner to saint, which really has big impact on me as a believer of the Almighty Father. Although we differ from religion, he has many points in his life where I can relate. When Augustine was still young, he committed a sin he wrote in his journal. It says there that he gets something he doesn't own just because it was pleasant in his eyes, do I, and he participated in the ways of evil, so do I. When I was young, I was stole money from my mother's pocket and stole fruits from my neighbors. I won't deny it because it is a part of my journey as Augustine recording his journal too. As Augustine grew into a man, he believed that he heard some divine voice and let him read word in the Bible. This made his life change. Um, I agree with it because based on my experience, I was also changed because of the words in the Holy Scriptures. Um, that's when I began to read and study, learn to pray, and so on. Augustine believed on the intuitive where peace comes from the moment you seek the Father Almighty. I am delighted and reminded with that idea of Augustine. Whatever you do in life, if you don't have the Almighty Father, you are empty. So this gives me hope to seek the divine presence more as I live, being a sinner and yet sin. We are all called sin in the Holy Scriptures because we are all the children of the Omnipotent. As Augustine values in passed on by disciples, I was really motivated to move on with this principle in life, principle in the Bible. I should keep it in my heart so I might not sin against the Almighty. So that's all. Before I end my presentation of St. Augustine, um, we're gonna read firstly his famous quote. He says there that the word is a book, and those who do not travel read only one page. So for me, we are all in the book. We are all different chapter in life. I hope even we're different religion, different belief, perspective, and stuff. Let's love each other as Almighty Father love us. So that's all. Thank you.
Good day everyone, I'm John Bergstal and let's talk about Saint Augustine. Who is Saint Augustine? Saint Augustine, also called Saint Augustine of Hippo, and his original Latin name was Aurelius Augustinus. Saint Augustine was a Christian philosopher and theologian. Saint Augustine was born on November 13, 354 AD and died on August 28, 430 AD at the age of 75. Saint Augustine of Hippo was renowned theologian and prolific writer. He was also a skilled preacher and rhetorician. And next, early life of Saint Augustine. Augustine was born in the year of 354 AD. His mother is believed to have been of Berber origin. After growing up, he began to learn and write a lot about Christianity and become a bishop of Hippo Regius was in the modern day of Annaba, Algeria. He was highly influenced by Archbishop Ambrose. Later in life of Saint Augustine, Saint Augustine moved to Italy, and over the next year, his religious ideology grew stronger, and he became a teacher. Notable works of Augustine. The first notable work of Saint Augustine was the Confession, and second on Christian doctrine, and number 3 on the Trinity, and lastly the City of God. And that's be all.
Good day! I am Christian David Cobol from BSMT Section 114 and I was assigned to the continuation of the topic Anthony DeMelio. First, what is my objective? My objective is to explain the 5 to 8 lessons in awareness by Anthony DeMelio. Who is Anthony DeMelio? Anthony DeMelio, also known as Tony DeMelio, was an Indian Jesuit priest and psychotherapist. A spiritual teacher, writer, and a public speaker, DeMelio wrote several books on spirituality and hosted numerous spiritual retreats and conferences. What are the works of Anthony DeMelio? Most of Anthony DeMelio's works was published a book, and they are related to life, spiritual, and God. An example are Awareness, Sadhana, The Way to Love, Rediscovering Life, 1 Minute Wisdom, and more. The 5 to 8 Lessons in Awareness by Anthony DeMelio. Number 5. Reprogram your mind. That's what learning is all about. Where spirituality is concerned, unlearning almost everything you've been taught, a willingness to unlearn, to listen. We have to be willing to unlearn everything you know in order to grow, because when we grow up, we are conditioned by our environment, our family, friends, teachers, government, and etc. Everyone dictates us how we are supposed to live our life. Our challenges is to evaluate what matters to us, to wake up and review everything we've been taught. I need to break out of this prison of mine, this programming, this conditioning, these false beliefs, these fantasies. I need to break out into reality. Eternal life is now. In real life, we need to wake up and face the reality in order to live freely. Forget your beliefs and what you are in the past, and for the better improvement of your life. Number 6. Stop identifying with the ego. It's not the reality that matters, but what you are saying to yourself about it. Reality is everywhere. It doesn't matter to ourselves, but it matters how we handle ourselves in terms of our self-perception, knowledge, esteem, especially on how we are aware to ourselves. Are you your clothes? Are you your name? Are you your profession? Stop identifying with them. They come and go. We have our different self-appraisal on how we believe ourselves, that we will be contented enough to avoid an ego. Number 7. Happiness is about being content. You're never so full of yourself as when you're in pain. You're never so centered on yourself as when you are depressed. You're never so ready to forget yourself as when you're happy. Happiness releases you from self. It is suffering and pain and misery and depression that tie you to the self. If you are just enjoying and always being happy your life and you did not face the challenges in your life, how can you be stronger? So we must face the challenges and able to be independent, and you can stand by yourself because you already know how to overcome your challenges. Even if how strong the storm hit in your life, you can stand by your own. Detached to feel free. An attachment is a belief that without something you are not going to be happy. The lesson in this sentence is we must be content with what we have. Being content makes you feel better because you don't have to think anything else, because you're content with what you have. An attachment to something that prevents you from feeling centered, or perhaps more than one attachment. This can be an attachment to people or things. It can be that you're anxious and believe you're deserving of it. So that's all, and thank you.
Good afternoon guys, my name is James Daruka and today I will discuss the self from the perspective from the various philosopher. But before I proceed to the discussion, I would like to ask you a question. What is self? Are we souls, bodies, or fragment of someone else's imagination? Or will I survive bodily death, or is it the end when my bodily self die? Or I'm a robot controlled by some entity? These three questions are we frequently asked to ourselves. And today I will discuss what is self for Anthony de Mello. And for those who don't know Anthony de Mello was an Indian Hesold Prize and psychotherapist. He was also a reputed religious teacher, public speaker, and writer who drew wisdom from the East and West tradition. And these three examples are what is self for Anthony de Mello. The first one is becoming like a child. How sad if we pass through life and never see it with the eyes of child. Do you remember guys, when we are child, you weren't thinking about what the future held? Or how would you attain that goal? Or how would you able to pay your bills? You weren't dwelling on the past regrets, sorrows, or triumphs. Either you were simply present. But when we grow up, we are being conditioned by our parents, direct families, school, and society. Through our experience and conditioning, we start living in the past and future. Anthony de Mello wants us to go back to that careless and curious feeling of being a child and return to one. The second is learn to die in order to live. I often said to people that the way to really live is to die. The password to living is to imagine yourself in your grave. When you remind yourself of the finality of your life, and when you accept it, it will propel you to live your life differently. If you know that you die in 1 month, you will probably do everything in your power to make the most of it. Why not now? If I'm lucky enough to die when I'm 90, why wouldn't I make the most of the next 60 years? In the timeline of universe, our lives are not even worth of seconds. So why waste this flash in time with being worried, afraid, or running after the wrong goals and ideals we believe? The last is be like an animal. Addiction, neglecting the needs of our bodies, being too busy, distractions, feeling guilty. A dog doesn't feel that. If you really enjoy life and simple pleasures of the senses, you'll be amazed. Developing that extraordinary discipline of the animal, an animal will never overeat, left its natural habitat. It will never overweight. It will never drink or anything that's not good for its health. You never find an animal smoking. It's all where exercise and relax as much as it needs. We lost that. We lost in our minds, in our ideas and ideals, and so on. It's always go, 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 and we got an inner self-conflict which animals don't have. And we are always condemning ourselves and making ourselves feeling guilty. But we don't need to be like a dog or cat. We can learn from their behavior. We are blessed and perhaps cursed with brain that needs distraction, and we live in time that we don't have to hunt for food but can buy as much as we want. It's up to us to find balance. And these three examples are what is self for Anthony de Mello. And I hope you learned something from these guys. Thank you.